Hey, what's going on, you guys? So I want to talk about double dashes. Double dashes are basically when you have one sentence that has two dashes in it. What do you do when you have this punctuation mark, right? Well, this type of punctuation mark, you guys, is very simple or straightforward to solve, right? Now, here's the tip that I want to give you guys is take a look at the answer choices first and foremost. Take a high-level view of the answer choices and tell me what you notice, right? You notice you have different punctuation marks, right? Especially when you have these dashes, right, as one of your answer choices, you know that you're going to be tested on punctuation. Almost always when you're tested on punctuation, you're going to be tested on sentence structure, okay? So the best way that I would tell you guys to deal with punctuation is to learn your punctuation rules. Now, there's 9 different punctuation marks that you have to know the rules for, right? So today, I'm going to teach you guys just one of those punctuation marks. And there's going to be a very powerful rule that I'll share with you guys. It's the rule for double dashes. Now, you notice that the answers have a dash in it, but you also take a look at the sentence itself. Okay, so you take a look at the passage itself and notice that there's this other dash in the sentence. Okay, so what does that tell us, right? That tells us if we plug in answer choice B or C, if we plug one of these two answers in, then we get a sentence that has 2 dashes in it, right? However, if we plug in answer choices A or D into the original passage, then how many dashes do we get in the passage? We only have 1 dash. Right? So now this is where you have to know the difference between, well, if I have a sentence that has 2 dashes in it, what do I do? Versus if I have a sentence that just has 1 dash in it, what do I do? Okay. So this is where I'll teach you guys the punctuation rules, right? For 1 dash and for 2 dashes as well, right? So before I do this, I do want to tell you guys that usually, not always, but about 75 to 80% of the time, when you have a dash in the passage, right, usually that second dash in your answer choice is going to be correct, right? Usually these are the right answers. Now, there's very specific things that I want you to check for to make sure that it's correct, right? But I'm just telling you guys, usually that's a good guess, right? So if you're just totally guessing on it, if you only have 5 seconds to answer the question, then choose one that has the second dash in it because it's usually going to be correct. Now, in this video, I'll share with you guys specifically or exactly what to look for to make sure with certainty that it's the right answer. But just telling you as a general rule of thumb, 2 dashes, if there's 1 dash in the sentence in the passage already, right, the second dash is going to be the correct answer, right? Usually. Okay. So, and I'll show you guys what to look for. But before I do that, though, I want to talk about the punctuation rules for a 1 dash and a 2 dash, right? So we'll first just take a look at a single dash. So a single dash is what it sounds like. It's when the sentence has 1 dash in it. Now, the rules for a single dash, I want you guys to know there's 2 main rules that I want you guys to check for. Okay. So the first rule is the information before the dash must be a complete sentence, right? That's the first thing that you're checking for. Because if you only have 1 dash in a sentence, then the information before the dash has to be a complete sentence. Check for that, okay? Rule number 1, must be a complete sentence. Now, rule number 2 is the information after the dash, right, is going to kind of clarify or explain the information that came before, okay? But that's basically it, right? Those are the 2 rules that you want to make sure to keep in mind. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, that kind of sounds a lot like colons, right? Well, that's because a colon and a single dash, right, have very similar rules, right? So a colon, if you guys aren't familiar with, a colon just looks kind of like this. It's got double periods, right? That's a colon. So on the SAT, you can think about these punctuation marks as having the same sort of punctuation rules. Okay, so the rule for a colon is the information before the colon must also be a complete sentence, an independent clause. Right now, the information after the colon must clarify or explain the information that came before the colon. So it kind of refers back to what was previously talked about, right? That's also what a single dash does. Now, then you might be asking me, well, Jin, what's the difference between the 2 punctuations then, right? Well, there is a slight difference, but the SAT doesn't test you on this difference. But just know that you might see this, right? Either in a passage on the SAT or just somewhere in real life, right? You're just reading an article and you notice a single dash. Well, that might be referring to this rule that I'm about to tell you guys. Okay, but you know that the SAT won't test you on this, so you don't have to worry about it too much. But the information, so the dash can go a little bit further than a colon can, right? So the information after the dash can, and oftentimes does, explain or clarify what was previously talked about. So it does kind of refer back to what was previously mentioned, right? But the dash can do one more thing. The single dash can also be used as a pause, as like a dramatic pause for effect, right? Just know that the information, so for example, if I said something like, I asked my girlfriend to marry me, it's kind of dramatic, right? Then I have a dash and you guys are waiting for the answer. And I say, she said no, or she said yes, right? Whatever it is, But that pause, right, is going to be used for dramatic effect, right? So that's one extra thing that a single dash can do that a colon can't do. But just know that the SAT won't test you on that because it's not a hard and set rule, right? But so just know that if you see a single dash on the SAT, just treat it like a colon, right? Where two rules, information before the dash must be a complete sentence, and the information after the dash is going to explain what came before it, okay? So you want to think about, right? It's similar to a colon in that way. So now, this is where if we take our what we just learned about the punctuation rules for a dash, then we know that if we look at answer choice A or D, we know that the passage is only going to have one dash in it, right? So now that's going to be the dash here. So now if we just check to see, right, if this single dash is going to be correct, we'll know that it's not, right? Why? Because the information before the dash is not a complete sentence, right? It's amidst the tumultuous landscape of contemporary geopolitics, Xi Jinping, right? This is a very incomplete sentence, right? Xi Jinping is just the subject of a sentence, but we don't have a complete sentence here, right? So we know that we don't have an independent clause before the dash. Therefore, right, the single dash answers are not going to be correct, right? Which is why A and D are going to be wrong. Okay, this is why I told you guys, usually when you see a dash in the passage, usually that second dash is going to be the correct answer, right? But now in this case, we have two answer choices that have dashes in it. B and C both have a dash. So now how do you check? So this is where I'll teach you guys the rule for a double dash, okay? So a double dash does not have the same rules as a single dash does, right? So the single dash, we just talked about the rules. A double dash has different rules that it has to obey. So a double dash, so the rule for a double dash is basically, it's just used to separate or break up non-essential information. Okay, so in other words, the information inside of the two dashes is going to be non-essential. Okay, now usually, not always, but usually these double dashes will come after the subject of a sentence. Okay, so you'll have like part of the independent clause, usually the subject of an independent clause here, and then you'll have the dash, and then you'll have non-essential information, then you'll have the dash as well. Okay, and then you'll have the rest of the sentence, right? The verb plus the complete thought of your independent clause. Okay, but just know that the information between the two dashes is going to be non-essential. And now what this information, non-essential information just means that it's not essential, right? It's not necessary for the sentence, right? To be a grammatical sentence. And it's not necessary for the sentence. In other words, the core meaning of the sentence does not change, right? Even if we remove this non-essential information. So this non-essential information is just kind of a fun fact. It just provides like a fun extra detail, but it's not necessary for the sentence to be a complete and correct sentence though, okay? So, and now the purpose of this non-essential information, right, is going to be to provide additional information. Now, usually it always provides additional information about the information that came before the first dash, right? So it's going to talk about or give some information about, in this case, Xi Jinping, okay? We'll kind of see that here. So that's the rule for a double dash. Now, there's another thing you should know for a double dash is, there's another question that I get asked is, well, Jin, what kind of information can be inside these two dashes? Well, you could have one word, it could be a sentence even, it could be a list, it could be whatever it is. So the information inside of two dashes, right, can be a complete sentence if the writer wants it to be. But all you have to know is just that it's non-essential and that it explains the previous information. It explains whatever came before the dash. Yeah, we'll take a look at that here, okay? So if we take a look at answer choices B or C, right? We'll know that the sentence has 2 dashes now, right? So now let's take a look in between or inside of the 2 dashes. It says General Secretary of the Communist Party of China, right? Well, let me ask you guys this question, you guys. Who was the General Secretary of the Communist Party of China? Well, you know that it's Xi Jinping, right? So the information inside of the 2 dashes, it does explain what came before it, right? So it tells you who Xi Jinping is, right? It gives you a little bit more of an extra detail, kind of a fun fact, but it's not necessary for the sentence, okay? That's what's going on here. Now, this is how you can tell if the second dash is correct. So when you notice a question that has, 2 dashes in it, right, then this is what you check for. So I want you guys to check these answers first, right? But I want you guys to check 2 things. So the first thing that I want you guys to check is I want you guys to read around the 2 dashes, right? So ignore whatever the non-essential information is here. Just ignore that, right? And then just read around it. And then what I want you guys to read for is I want you guys to read to see if this is a complete sentence. Okay, if this is an independent clause. Okay, so that's what you're checking for. Okay, so what that looks like in practice is it says Xi Jinping, that looks like my subject of the sentence, right? Xi Jinping emerges as a pivotal figure, right? That's what you're checking for. So you ignore the information inside of the dashes and you read around it. And what you're reading for is you're reading to see if this is a complete sentence or not. Right? Well, we know that it is because it has a subject. The subject is Xi Jinping, and it also has a verb and a complete thought, right? Xi Jinping emerges as a pivotal figure is my complete sentence, okay? Now, notice how you guys, if you plug in answer choice C, we don't have an independent clause. We have an incomplete sentence. Why? Because it's missing a verb, right? Because everyone should know that when you read the sentence that says Xi Jinping emerging as a pivotal figure, everyone should be able to recognize that's not a complete sentence. Why is that not a complete sentence? Because we don't have a verb in it. Right? We don't have a main verb. Emerging by itself, ing words by themselves are not verbs, right? They're written from verbs, but they don't act like, right? And so we know that the correct answer is going to be B in this case, right? But I'm just going through, you guys, the checklist of what to check for, right? So the first thing that you check for is you read around the dashes. So you ignore the information inside of the dashes, and you're checking to see if this is a complete sentence. Check to see if it has a subject, a verb, and a complete thought, right? If it does, cool. Now, the second thing that I want you guys to check for, just in case, right? The second thing that I want you guys to check for is check the information between the 2 dashes. So I want you guys to actually check to see if this non-essential information actually explains the information that came before it. I want you guys to check to make sure that it does, because that's what the grammar, or that's what the punctuation rule says, right? The information inside of the 2 dashes, that non-essential information, the purpose of that is to clarify or to explain the information that came before it, right? So that's the second thing that you're checking for, okay? And if it does, then great, this is your correct answer. Okay, so in this case, we already checked that it did, right? Because General Secretary of the Communist Party of China is referring to Xi Jinping, right? So because it refers to that person, we know that it's doing its job, right? So we know that this is why we know that B is going to be the correct answer for this question, okay? So awesome, you guys. So that'll be it. So now, again, to recap, right? When you have, a dash in the original passage, usually that second dash in the answer choices is going to be correct. Not always, but usually. So I want you guys to check that first, right? And I want you guys to check 2 things. One, you read the sentence without the information inside of the dashes, and you're checking to see if it's a grammatically correct sentence. Is it a complete sentence? If it is, great. Then do the second thing, right? The second thing is going to be to make sure that the information inside of the 2 dashes actually explains, right, the information that came before it. Make sure that it explains what came before it. Again, if it does, great. That's going to be your correct answer. Okay, and then we're going to be done, right, for this question. Cool. So guys, that's going to do it for this video. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. Please help spread the word to a lot of students who need this stuff. SAT prep is expensive, right? A lot of students can't afford it. I was blessed to have worked as a top test prep instructor in the most expensive academy in Korea. And so basically you kind of know what that means, right? Well, I was able to only work with a very small percentage of people who could afford to pay, right, these high prices. But I wanted to do more, right, for more people. And so that's why I'm creating these videos. This is exactly what I teach to my students. Well, I've taught in private lessons or in group settings. Of course, I see them for longer periods of time than I can actually work with them, one-on-one, but this is the exact same stuff that I tell them. I'm not holding anything back for you guys. And so I need you guys to kind of help me out, right, by spreading this word. I'm trying to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of this year. And I'm trying to reach millions of students, right? I'm trying to give them the top 1% SAT instruction that they need to help them score fewer than 5 wrong on this test. That is my mission, and I'm committed to helping and to achieving. I need you guys' help with that. So please make sure to do that. Also, you guys, please comment in the comment box below. Tell me one thing that you learned that was pretty helpful for you, and tell me one thing that you want to learn, right? I'm committed to, I read all of your guys' messages. And there's actually a bunch of messages I have to reply to today. And I'll do that, in the afternoon after making these videos. But my videos that I make are inspired by your guys' comments. So the more that you tell me what you want to learn, the more I can help you guys out. Okay. I'm pretty sure I have the answer that you're looking for. It's just you have to know how to ask. So please make sure to ask in the comment section below, and I'll make sure to get to that video, in a timely manner. Aside from that, you guys make sure to always stay kind of curious. Never stop learning. You guys got this. Take care until the next video, you guys. Keep on moving forward.